study your holy word. Lord, we pray that you bless our time together. Lord, that you would give us eyes to see and ears to hear what your word would teach us. Lord, that you would bless us with wisdom. Lord, that we'd take what we learn here tonight, apply it to our lives, and grow stronger, more faithful to you in our everyday lives. Lord, we're mindful of the sick of our number. There are those that have daily health struggles. We pray that you'd bless and strengthen them. Those who are battling illness, disease, Lord, we pray that you strengthen their bodies. And those with physical infirmities, Lord, we pray that you bless and heal them as well. Lord, we pray that you bless our time together here this evening. You help us to put the cares of the world far from our minds, that we can focus intently on your word for just a little while. Lord, we pray these things in Christ's name.
I forgot you had class. I just hopped off and left you, didn't I? It's all right. Your daughter did too. She just right past. There you go.
She said Lizzie would get over to her if she helped me.
Yeah. Good evening. Welcome. Today's the first day in several that I got out of the house without long sleeves on. It's been nice. I've enjoyed today. Hope that you have as well. I'm glad that you're here. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 25. We left off with David last chapter. He and Solomon had sort of, I don't know if we're going to say made amends or not, but David snuck up close enough to Saul to cut a corner off his robe. It let him know pretty quick that he got close enough he could have taken his life, and David proclaimed as much. And Saul repented, left David alone, and went ahead and went back to Gibeah. And also David turned, and rather than going with Saul back to Gibeah, they didn't reconcile enough that David was comfortable to go back with him. David went back to the stronghold. And so we have David and Saul sort of on maybe a brief hiatus in their run from the law there, Saul pursuing David. But at the very beginning here of chapter 5, something else pretty big happens. Now, I do want to remind us where we're at geographically. You see the Dead Sea over to the right-hand side of the screen here, En-Gedi marked, and that's where we have the cutting of the robe episode. David been hiding out in the wilderness of Ziph, and we've talked about how rugged this terrain is. We looked at pictures last week, seeing how harsh the terrain is. It's desert, it's rocks, it's dirt, it's caves. It's no fun except for the paradise there at En-Gedi. In fact, it's called the Oasis of En-Gedi. So pretty unique area there. And this is where David's hiding out. So we pick up in the very first verse of chapter 25. And now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him in his house at Ramah. And then David rose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. And so this is a break in the action between what's going on with David and Saul. In fact, this chapter is going to be like this. This is a very concise, informative verse, right? This is Samuel. He is one of the greatest prophets of Israel. He was their last judge. He led Israel like a king. He advised Saul right up until Saul went out of his mind. He's done so much for Israel, and what we get is one verse. He died, Israel assembled and mourned, and they buried him in his house. And that's what we get. There is no reason for us to doubt that when the author tells us that all Israel assembled and mourned, that he doesn't mean exactly that. That both David assembled here at Ramah, that 600 men that's following him around were with him, that Saul was there. There's no reason to doubt that at this moment, because this happens during this hiatus between Saul and David. And so we have a moment here of solidarity. We have a moment of national mourning. I think we've experienced that in this country a couple times, where something happened nationally that sort of brought people closer together, right? And this is perhaps one of those events, but yet our author only spends a brief amount of time. I believe it's for a purpose. We're not through with Samuel yet. He's going to bring him back, so to speak, and, well, almost literally. So we'll talk about Samuel more, but for now, logistically speaking, the author is just proceeding right through with his narrative. We have the reactive, what results after the funeral, after the memorial. David rose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. This is a little bit different of a map. I had a sort of a 3D model. I think it's a little easier to see the topography of southern Israel here. It'll help us maybe understand just how far David got up and left once Samuel dies. And I've kind of wondered about that, thought of some reasons perhaps David has fled like he has, or the reason he went as far as he did. Right now, we're talking about En-Gedi being off the map up here, somewhere further this way. And David has fled from Ramah, which was even further to the north, and come all the way down the Jordan Valley to the wilderness of Paran. This is way down here. At this point, David is not very far from the Gulf of Aqaba. He's right at the north end of the Red Sea. He is way south. If you look up here, you see Beersheba. We talk about from Dan to Beersheba because that usually just sort of gives us a mental frame for the north and the south end of Israel. And Beersheba is way up here north of the wilderness of Paran. David has put some earth between he and Saul. I'm not going to suggest completely that it's because of Samuel's death and he believes that Saul is going to come back even more fierce than ever. Maybe that's the case. But whatever the case may be, David has left the building, so to speak. He has really traveled a ways to get away from Saul and away from Israel. And so we pick up with a new narrative. We're going to have new characters, new actors, so to speak. There was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. And I'm saying it that way to differentiate. I told you I've got a program that speaks Hebrew to me so I can hear what the word is supposed to sound like. This Carmel is not to be confused with Mount Carmel, not Elisha, not the prophets of Baal, not the historic ones so much. Old Testament history takes place up in Jezreel Valley where it meets the Mediterranean up there. That's not where we're talking about. We're talking about a small village in way south end of Israel down there, not far off of the Dead Sea Valley. So we're in a new location, so I'm saying it that way mainly because that's the way the program said say it, but I think maybe just to make sure we keep it different than Mount Carmel. Okay, so he's shearing his sheep. He's wealthy. He's got 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats. He's doing pretty good for himself. Now, the name of this man was Nabal. The name of his wife, Abigail. The woman was discerning and beautiful, but the man was harsh and badly behaved. He was a Calebite. I like clarity. I like it when an author just sort of lays things out here. He's already built in some anticipation for us. The woman is discerning and beautiful. Now, we can't tell from the text whether she's beautiful or not, but we are going to be able to tell from the text that she's discerning. She's wise. She is shrewd. She is a diplomat. We're going to learn that in just a minute. But the man, Nabal, he's harsh. He's badly behaved. He's a Calebite. And the Calebite part is not necessarily a reference to his behavior. From what we know about Caleb is all good, right? He's one of the spies. He and Joshua coming back from spying out the land. You know, he was one of those that had faith that they'd be able to go in and take the promised land, that they could beat the giants and all that. Make it sound like a football team. But you understand, being a Calebite is not a bad thing, but being harsh or badly behaved, it sort of puts us on guard against Nabal right away. So Carmel is back a pretty good bit north from where David is hiding out or moved down to. He's going to be somewhere north of the dehumidifier and somewhere south of the outlet right here is where he's going to be, geographically speaking. Carmel is up here south of Horesh. It's still going to be in the wilderness. It's still a pretty desolate place where we're at, just to get us an idea about what's taking place. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing the sheep. And so David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. And thus you shall greet him. Peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. I hear that you have shearers, and now your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm, and they missed nothing in all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever you have at hand to your servants and to your son, David." Okay, hear the proposition. This is going to get fleshed out a little bit more, what David's talking about, but David has provided protection for Nabal's shepherds. All these thousands of sheep and 1,000 goats, David has kept them from being harmed. Remember, the Philistines are still a people. They are still making raids on Israel. They are still doing damage. But not to Nabal. David's men have looked out for them. They've suffered no loss while they've been on guard. We're going to see both day and night here in just a minute. And so David is asking for not necessarily compensation. Because it's a feast day, the law would actually regulate that Nabal's household provide for guests, for visitors. So it's not that David is asking something sideways here. It's well within their custom. When David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David. And then they waited. Let's pause right there for just a second, because that's pretty meaningful. They say all this in the name of David. Remember, David is famous. David is the national hero of Israel. His fame has spread ever since he defeated Goliath, and he became a general in Saul's army. And he's leading these elite soldiers around, defeating the Philistines here and there and everywhere. David has got huge fame in Israel. He's honorable, and no one is saying anything contrary about David. David is well known, well liked, well loved, and respected. And then we get to verse 10. And Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've killed from my shears and give it to men who come from I don't know where?" That's a pretty huge insult. That is a pretty amazing and foolish insult that Nabal has just paid David. And he even insinuates that David is like a runaway slave. Saul has persecuted him, right? I'm sure that has spread around Israel. And David has been fleeing from Saul. And so what Nabal says here is, well, it matches the character that he's been described of. He's harsh, and he is not bright, is what we're going to come to see. So David's young men turned away and came back and told him all this. And David said to every man, to his men, "Every man strap on his sword." And every man of them strapped on his sword, and David also strapped on his sword. And about 400 men went up after David, while 200 remained with the baggage. As far as we know, David's still carrying Goliath's sword around. That's what he had last time we were informed about the sword, or the weapon that he's carrying around. It may not be it, but as far as we know, it is. He's got 400 of those guys with him, these men of war that are going to go with him. It's probably about 390 more than what he needs to deal with Nabal. But you understand, he's showing up with a force that is not going to be able to be reckoned with, right? He's not showing up with just a couple fellas with him. Right? He is showing up with a force for just one man's household, right? One of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, "Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he railed at them. And yet the men were very good to us, and we suffered no harm, and we did not miss anything when we were in the fields as long as we went with them." We see the protection aspect of it. It wasn't as clear the first time that they talk about it, but here we understand that David's men provided a watch, a lookout, protection for Nabal's shepherd hands. Verse 16, they were a wall to us both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. So you see that David's men did Nabal a great favor. They provided protection day and night for his shepherds, for the flocks. No raiders coming. He suffered no loss. It didn't mean no loss to his men, because that's implied. He means he protected them from loss from the Ammonites, from the Medians, from the Philistines. No one came and raided Nabal while David's men were there providing protection. So verse 17, now this is the servant speaking to Abigail, "Now therefore know this and consider what you should do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his house. And he is such a worthless man that one cannot speak to him." That's pretty amazing, pretty harsh language, right? The servant thinks of his master this way. He is harsh, he is worthless, and you can't talk to him. You're not going to talk any sense to him, because he's not going to listen to it, right? That's the gist of what the servant is getting at. But Abigail, she's discerning, right? That's what we've been told. And Abigail made haste, took 200 loaves, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already prepared, and 5 seahs of parched grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on donkeys. Now we got a pretty good load here. Now it's not going to feed 600 guys, and whoever else is with them, right? But Abigail is doing this unbeknownst to Nabal, right? She's scraping together what she can get. She's going to take everything she can get her hands on to David, right? I mean, proportionally speaking, we got all this bread, we've got a little bit of meat here, no sheep, got all this grain and raisins and cakes, and we see already that 2 skins of wine is not going to go very far for all that. Not washing all that down, but it's a token, right? It's a token of what she is trying to accomplish and gain favor with David. She said to her young men, "Go on before me, before I come after, and behold, I come after you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal, and as she rode on the donkey and came down under the cover of the mountain, behold, David and his men came down toward her, and she met them. That's what she meant to do, right? She's playing the role of diplomat, playing the role of a diplomat. Now David had said, this is an aside from the author. This is you didn't know this before. I'm going to tell you about what David said now, so you can understand the gist of what's happening when David meets Abigail and what she's doing. So David had said, "Surely in vain I have guarded all that this fellow has in the wilderness, and so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him, and he has returned me evil for good. God do so to the enemies of David, and more also, if by morning I leave so much as one male of all who belong to him." David has in his mind that he and these 400 men are going to annihilate Nabal and his household. His lineage is going to be cut off from Israel. It harkens back to Judges and Joshua, when God proclaims a city to be destroyed, to make it harem, devoted to God, devoted to destruction, that nothing is to be saved. This is David's plan. He is planning on going in there and wiping out Nabal. There's going to be nothing left no genealogy to carry on, nothing. However, verse 23, Abigail saw David. She hurried and got down from the donkey and fell before David on her face and bowed to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "On me alone, my Lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant." Even already, we see Abigail prostrate before David. She is speaking very diplomatically, right? She is appealing to his lordship, his status as a leader, as a hero in Israel. The leader of this group of men is with her. She is acknowledging his status. Verse 25, we're going to, in fact, through the next 4 or 5 verses, the word Lord is going to be used repetitively. And so as I read it, I want you to recognize in the lowercase ones, such as right here in verse 25, she is referring specifically to David, while at the same time using Lord to specifically relate to the God of Israel, the Lord God, okay? So we're going to have to keep that straight. She never refers to Nabal as Lord, only by his name. Okay, verse 25. Let not my Lord, David, regard this worthless fellow, Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. Any of you guys have a footnote that tell you what Nabal means? Fool. I've wondered about that, and I find it interesting because it's his name, right? So what is the process? Does his life come to reflect the name? They come to know him as Nabal, and they see he is harsh and that he is foolish, and so they just associate the name Nabal with foolish? Or was he born, his mama looked down at him and said, "He looks like a fool. I think I'll call him fool." Right? Probably not how that worked. But that is his name, and that is the meaning of his name, Nabal. All right, which means fool. So he's harsh, he's foolish. His servant called him a worthless fellow. All right? Not a lot of accolades going towards Nabal. All right, as she continues here in verse 25, but I, your servant, did not see the young men of my Lord whom you sent. Now then, my Lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from saving with your own hand, now then let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my Lord be as Nabal. And now let this present that your servant has brought to my Lord be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the trespass of your servant. She's not referring to Nabal. She's referring to herself here, his servant. Verse 28, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord is fighting the battles of the Lord, and evil shall not be found in you so long as you live. When I said that she is shrewd and discerning, I meant it. She is saying all the right things in all the right ways to David, to get his anger to subside, right? She has got him on the side of God. She is actually persuading him not to take out his blood guilt, his vengeance on Nabal, that he's not worthy of it, right? This is pretty powerful, this speech that Abigail is making towards David. If men rise up to pursue you and seek your life, the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living in the care of the Lord your God. And the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the hollow of a sling. And when the Lord has done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you and has appointed you prince over Israel, my Lord shall have no cause of grief or pains of conscience for having shed blood without cause, or for my Lord working salvation himself. And when the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, remember your servant. She is smart. She has just tied David to prophecy. She has tied David to God, which David has already shown himself at every moment pursuing God's will, right? He has the priest with him with the ephod. Every time David makes a move or makes a decision, he consults God. He has shown himself to be diligent and faithful. Here, Abigail ties him to the faithfulness of God. When these prophecies concerning you and God come true, she's already hinted around that she knows he's going to rule Israel. When this happens, you don't want to look back and have remorse over your blood guilt, this thing that you're about to do to Nabal. That's really smart argument. David's going to sit there and say, she's got a point. And not only is she pouring sugar all over him with all the Lord talk, right, calling him my Lord and acknowledging his faithfulness and righteousness and his standing before God and before Israel, she is giving him wise counsel that he's going to need to hear to help his future kingdom, rule, go much smoother without having this weighing on him. And so she is, she is a diplomat. She is wise. She is shrewd. She is the hero of the text at this particular point. David said to Abigail, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. Blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you who have kept me this day from blood guilt and from working salvation with my own hand." David has come to his senses. This is one of those situations where we have the neck that turns the head. That's about what it's going to be here in just a moment. Abigail has provided very wise counsel. David recognizes her wise counsel. He is going to listen to her wise counsel. And now he is blessing her for her wise counsel, right? So he's acknowledging what she has done for him. In verse 34, that continues, "For as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, truly by morning there had not been left in Nabal so much as one male." And then David received from her hand what she had brought him. He said to her, "Go up in peace to your house, and see, I have obeyed your voice, and I've granted your petition." So this is best case scenario for Abigail, right? She's accomplished what she set out to do. She has saved her household. Whether she cared much of anything for Nabal or not, she has people at that household that she loves, right? She's got family. She's got servants that she cares about. She has just saved them from destruction, and she saved David from blood guilt, the guilt of having done this thing, pursuing his own righteousness. So David receives her gift, and really no more than it is, it's a token. It's not going to feed those 600 men or anything, but it's a token. And it has assuaged his anger, and he has, we're going to see that he's come to think rather fondly of Abigail. David received from her hand what she brought. Oh, I put that one on there twice. Let me skip on to verse 36. Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he was holding a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry with him, for he was very drunk. And so she told him nothing at all until the morning light, which is smart, right? Because he's harsh, he's a worthless fellow, and he tends to be foolish. Probably not the best time to just tell him that she went and brokered a deal with David, whom he refused. So in verse 37, in the morning, when the wine had gone out of Nabal, when he sobered up, his wife told him these things, and his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. It's curious. what's going on here in verse 7. Are we talking about a physical thing that's happening here? His heart died. Some of your texts may say he had a stroke. We try to explain what's going on here. Nabal, even according to the definition of his own name, dealt foolishly with David. Foolishly. He spoke to David's servants and sent this message back to the hero of Israel, the future king. I can't emphasize the word foolish enough. Maybe I could say unwise, but that doesn't seem strong enough either. Nabal becomes very acutely aware of how foolish he was. His wife met the army on their way to slaughter him and his household, to wipe his name out of the records of Israel. And he comes to face with his own foolishness. That's a hard thing. So, is it at this moment that his heart dies, that he becomes as a stone because he recognizes in himself his failures and he just zones out? Is that what we're talking about? Did something physically happen to him upon hearing it? Maybe he had a stroke. But it seems that in verse 38, it's 10 days later that the Lord struck Nabal. He got to wrestle with that for 10 days before he died. So whatever's going on with him physically, God plays the role of vindicator. God plays the role of judge and justifier, so that David did not take his own righteousness into his own hands. And that was David's intention. So Abigail saved David from blood guilt, from committing this great atrocity, and then God turns and vindicates David. Now, this is the powerful thing that's going on in this chapter. This is God reassuring David. At every turn, God has fortified David. He has kept him safe. He's given him everything that he's needed. And here in this moment where David is going to act in his wrath and his fury, God sends Abigail, and God restrains David. But then God goes and does the thing that David intended to do for him, but he does it righteously. He takes Nabal, not his entire family. He doesn't slaughter the household, but he strikes down Nabal. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Blessed be the Lord who has avenged the insult I received at the hand of Nabal and has kept back his servant from wrongdoing. The Lord has returned the evil on Nabal on his own head." And then David sent and spoke to Abigail to take her as his wife. So David acknowledges what God has done, that God has avenged the wrongdoing done to David and saved David from committing this great wrong. And he gets a wife out of the deal, right? Abigail. I think he recognized right quick, this goes back to the neck that turns the head kind of statement. David recognizes he needs to join himself to someone smarter than himself. And it seems to be what David is doing here. She is just too righteous, too smart, too shrewd, too wise to not pursue. I think it's funny because cultural differences and all. We understand that. I was talking to Tammy about this. I wonder if it would have worked if I could have just sent somebody to fetch you for me about 29 years ago, something like that. Why don't you just go fetch that one right yonder back there, you see? Go get her. Yeah, it doesn't work so well, I don't think. So verse 40, the servants of David came to Abigail at Carmel and said to her, "David has sent us to you to take you to him as his wife." That's rather straightforward, right? There's no roses, no chocolates, nothing that we can discern here. Verse 41, she rose up, bowed with her face to the ground, and said, "Behold, your handmaid is a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord." Abigail once again reveals herself to be extremely shrewd. She does nothing but show humility to David, to his servants, Remember the words, and this is the contrast we get here. This is a contrast between Abigail and Nabal. It's how we started the chapter. Nabal is a harsh, worthless fellow, but Abigail is discerning. And here we've seen each of those traits play out. And verse 41 sort of puts the bow on top. This is Abigail showing her great discernment, her wisdom. And she prostrates herself. She makes herself humble before David, before his servants. And so this is a powerful display put on by Abigail. Verse 42, Abigail hurried, rose, and mounted a donkey, and her 5 young women attended her. She followed the messengers of David and became his wife. So there you have it. David has picked up another wife. And as we continue, David also took, and this is more of an aside again, this is kind of a side note, David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and both of them became his wives. We don't know anything about her just yet. Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Palti, the son of Laish, who was of Galim. So David lost one wife, the first, the daughter of Saul, but he replaced her with 2. He took 1 step back and 2 steps forward, if you want to look about it like that. Or some of you may say he took a step forward and 2 steps back, depending on your opinion of the situation, I suppose. But David is married. He, on account of Abigail, dodged a great wrongdoing. God sent Abigail to stop David. He stopped, and Abigail has proven herself to be wise, and she is going to be an asset to David, right? All right, that is chapter 25. You have any thoughts or questions about this chapter?
These wives and things, did these wives go with him when he went fighting and all that kind of stuff?
Did they go with him?
Yeah.
Not typically. Not typically. However, if I was going to choose one to go with me, I think Abigail would be a wise choice. If nothing else, just a whisper in the ear to give advice. But
How long from the time that Saul gave his daughter away to him from him?
not really sure about the amount of time that we've had. We could go back and count chapters, but that really doesn't do anything for us as far as establishing a timeline, so to speak. Not here in 1 Samuel, anyway. We will jump into chapter 26 next week if nothing happens, and get back into more action as well. I guess we're through, Ralph. If you want to go get the teen class, we've got an announcement to make here in just a moment. We'll wait for everybody to come in. This is the most interesting scenario because I was given a bag and told to make an